Okay, if we could stand for the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thanks everybody for attending. We'll call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. I think the agenda is set. So we'll move on to our approval of the minutes. Be it resolved that the minutes of the 115 and 122 meetings be approved. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. So we'll move on to presentations. Maybe before we start, we'll just mention this is our first meeting of Skyping a board member in. So Chris is joining us remotely from his job. He's in an official capacity. He can vote. He can do everything. So we're giving this a try. Seems like it's going okay. So moving on to presentations, I think JC is going to start us off.
I'd like to ask Todd Hoffines to come on up. Recognize Todd. It's hard to put into words everything that Todd does for our OA family, but got a little plaque here. He was the New York State Beef Producers Educator of the Year. So congratulations to Todd. Todd takes an exorbitant amount of time away from his family to do things for our OA family. Camp Oswegatchie, National FFA Convention, County Fair, State Fairs. He worked through the building of the barn, had the animals. Every time I turn around, Todd is tutoring one of our young people. And one of my favorite memories of Todd will always be when we were at the last ski trip for 7th grade. And he was on the magic carpet skiing backwards with one of our 7th graders down the hill. She had a big old smile and they bumped knuckles. They both were smiling. It was great. One of those memories of that's awesome. Every time we turn around, he's doing something like that for some of our kids. And we want to make sure we recognize him for all the work that he does. It's very much appreciated. We know it takes a lot of time out of your day to do that for us, but we appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
So the board thanks you also, Todd. One thing that I would mention in your bio when you accepted the award, I'd mentioned that I believe it's about $100,000 that Todd and his efforts with the ag program he's generated for this school and for the students of this school. Some of that money has come from the state and then some from private businesses here locally and then also from the community. So I think it demonstrates that if you've got a great leader like Todd is, there are people that will support programs. So he's been able to generate a lot of local money that's gone into the school to build a barn that JC has mentioned and some seed money to get kids to the fair and do a lot of great things. So we appreciate that too, Todd.
You're welcome. No, I do have to say it's a group effort. It's not just me. I appreciate the honors, and I mentioned this in Syracuse when I received the award from the beef producers. It was certainly done by group effort. I couldn't do this alone without the support of administration, the parents, and the kids. You got to get them to sign up for the classes, to be involved. The grant money, well, that's just a formality now. You have to do it in order to survive, but it was definitely a group effort. So I thank you guys for the support and other administration and parents as well. And my Ag Advisory Committee, that was huge too. So thank you. I appreciate this honor. So thank you.
Thanks, Todd.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
You should thank you as well for all of your sacrifices. I will.
Linda?
I would like to welcome our Student Lighthouse team and our two coordinators. We have Michelle Crawford. She was formerly Miss Smith. She's been married. And Miss next to her is Megan Johnson. They both teach 3rd grade. And they are going to take over.
So really, this is kid-driven. They're going to be presenting most of this information. We'll be here to assist and answer any questions if you need to. But we're happy to share about Synergize on 6. So I'm going to turn it over to Callie.
Each day we have 30 minutes of leadership time to start our day. On day 6, during this time, we participate in our Synergize on 6 groups. How did students choose a group? The first step that we had to do is each of the faculty members or group of the faculty created a flipgrid to promote their group. Next, we each have grades 1 through 6 students watched these videos during their leadership time and submitted their top 3 choices. Pre-K and K participate in their own classrooms. They are part of the Cran Recycling Club.
Teachers make sure that students get one of the top 3 choices. We began the fun in October.
Yeah, you're okay.
One of the clubs is Recycling Club. They go around collecting the papers in the recycling bin. Card Club makes cards for all the students' birthdays. There's also the dance game, board game club, and Explorers Club. Courtyard Gardening is currently painting rocks, and Explorers Club learned origami. There is also Legos Club, Jazz Band, Tennis Club, and the Student Lighthouse team.
Can you use that play on the video? So this is a video from some of our students about why they love Synergize on 6 and some student testimonials from their class.
What are your thoughts about tennis club? I think it's really fun, and I like soccer because we get tennis ball and ball. What company are you in? I'm in the men's team. Why do you like it?
I like it because I get to interview people and I get to write articles.
Come synergize with us. Our next Synergize on 6 is tomorrow. We invite you on any day 6 to come to the elementary school from 8:35 to 9:05 and participate.
Okay, and then as they pass this out, on the front is our invitation to you to come join us sometime. And on the back is a full list of all of our Synergize clubs. And then our students right now are going to share what they love most about Synergize on 6. So these are all heartfelt emotions about why we do this program.
I like Synergize on 6 because as a 6th grader, we are closed off from the rest of the school. And I am friends with a lot of smaller children, and I don't get to see them, that I don't get to see. And it gives me an opportunity to see them, and it gives them a smile on their face when they see older kids that they look up to. And it makes me happy to see them happy and not upset. I like Synergize on 6 because it gives everybody new opportunities and creates more of a bond between grades. It also changes up our schedule in a good and positive way.
I like Synergize on 6 because everyone participates and we are given a lot of opportunities to change our school. I like Synergize on 6 because it gives me a pep in my step. I like the idea of Synergize on 6 because it's an opportunity to learn new things. We can also meet new teachers and maybe some new friends. I like Synergize on 6 because there are a lot of clubs that let us be active, creative, and just be ourselves. We are learning to be great leaders who smile and greet each other.
So do you have any questions for us either about the Student Lighthouse team or Synergize on 6?
So the clubs listed here, who came up with all of these different clubs? Was that student-driven? Was that something that the teachers gave you choices into signing up for?
The teachers made the clubs by deciding what they were good at and what they liked to do.
So a lot of them are, what she said, like passion driven by the teachers.
Okay.
So things that they were interested in, thought that the students would be interested in. And next year, those clubs could change just based on what staff we have and what we've seen as far as the interest in them, and maybe if they've been inspired for some other things. And hopefully next year the students will start to say, like, this is a club. The drama club is one of those that they came to Mrs. Gaylor and said, this is something we're interested in, and we would love for someone to head this up for us.
So if one of us were to come to a Synergize on 6th Day, which club do you think we would most want to be a part of?
Ours. The Lighthouse team?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, this is a biased group because this is our student Lighthouse team. And the Lighthouse team is selected. The kids send in an application and they interview, and we try to do 2 students per grade level to really give everybody a voice. But I think if you ask some of the other kids in our building, if you came to visit on Synergize on 6, we'd walk you around and you'd see a lot of action and activity. And I know that John has come down, Officer Wilson has come down, Nicole has come down, and they think they're going to stay for a quick visit, and the next thing you know, they're bopping from one to the other, and they're there for the whole leadership time. And it's a contagious way to start your day. So what are the other things the Student Lighthouse team is working on this year?
We've done lots of wee videos.
Wee videos about what topics?
Like we've done some for assemblies. We've done the ones that you watched today. We've made the 7 Habits videos about us reading books and finding what the 7 Habit was.
And a lot of those. Oh, sorry.
We put up all the pictures of the teacher, and we went around to find their word that they want to live by for the year. And we put a lot of work into that to go around all the teachers.
Give everybody a voice.
We walk around and give each class a snack for the month.
Yes. Anything else that we do that you're proud of?
What's pretty amazing about this group is they'll start an initiative and it's done. So they will take it upon themselves. They do it all. So it's very, Mrs. Johnson and I do very little for the Student Lighthouse team. So they truly, we're just building this culture of leaders in our school. They even came down today, like, what can I do for this presentation? What else do we need? The one word is completely done by all of them. So we're pretty proud of this group of kids.
Any other questions for us?
How often it sounds like your team is kind of a special one where you apply for and there's representatives, but the other clubs, how often do the kids rotate? Do the kids have a chance to get into multiple clubs?
Not until the next time not until the next year that it happens.
So this is our first year for Synergize on 6, and it was the first year we've been able to designate leadership time in our schedule. And we're finding that it's working really well for the teachers to go through some team building activities to reteach or enhance the leader 7 habits. And we've had some students approach me to suggest that we regroup. So at the next Teacher Lighthouse team, we're going to talk about what that looks like and what offerings we can provide so that some of our kiddos that perhaps got their first choice or their second choice can switch it up and try something new. So we're going to try to meet their request of switching it up probably twice a year. But this is the first year we got it under control and we wanted to feel it out. But one thing that we've all learned as the adults in the building, the kids have a lot of ideas and they generate them quickly and they want action yesterday. So we don't have time to drag our feet. When they come with an idea, they're very much like, so when is it happening? And we just have to jump in line and say, oh, yes, we're going to do it. So we are going to be meeting that request here in the next couple weeks.
Great.
Anything else? Well, thanks for letting us come tonight and for me to brag on our kids. This is something that's been really special for us this year, and I really appreciate our teachers stepping into this role and our students for always using their voice. I appreciate your help tonight. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for presenting, students. Any visitors requests?
You can't see it, you gotta step forward more.
What's that?
Thank you for coming.
Looks like. I got a text. I think a few of us might have got a text from Lauren. It sounds like she got here and she wasn't feeling well, so she went back home, so she won't be able to join us. Moving on to approval of warrants. Be it resolved that after an audit of the bills, payment of the 124, 2, and 27 warrants, and internal claims auditor reports be approved. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Jen, in a second.
Second.
Jeff. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes. Treasurer's report. Be it resolved the treasurer's report for December of 2018 and January 2019 be approved. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. On to Nicole.
So I left for all of you a copy of the slides that I have to present. We've been working hard on the budget, so I wanted to give you an update about that. So a couple of the highlights that we're looking at right now, just as a reminder, some of these we talked about. We originally budgeted for a 10% health insurance increase in the initial go of the budget that we discussed last month. And recently, the Genesee Area Health Plan, which is where we get our insurance, you're fine. Where we get our health insurance, has passed a 3% increase for health insurance. So we're going to be looking at as we start to really hone down and cut items in the budget. Probably want to keep a little bit of a surplus in there for people going off insurance, coming on insurance, and those things. Also, 1% increase for the teacher retirement system. We built that. We're not really sure at this point where that's going to go. They're estimating an 8% cost versus this year we're paying 10% of all the employee salaries for teachers' retirement. And I added a 1% increase for the employee retirement system. That's all of our CSEA employees. Additionally, we have the SRO for next year, funding for that. We're currently exploring whether we should hire a director of curriculum or replace the elementary assistant principal position and what that would look like. So we wouldn't be adding any administrators. We would just be shifting that position potentially. But that's, again, something we're still exploring at this point. As part of our tax cap, and I was looking at that, and as we go through the process of that, we're looking at how much money we can raise taxes in the next year. CPI, the Consumer Price Index, is usually the max, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what you can raise your taxes to. They have these things called exclusions. So you look at what your debt is, for example. We always have a capital exclusion, and something that I've presented on in the past. We have to make sure that we're prepared for capital projects, keeping that capital exclusion flat. So with the emergency project we had last year, we get a 1-year bump in our aid from our building aid. So what does that do? That eliminates our capital exclusion for the year. So so that we wouldn't have a negative exclusion this year, we're going to purchase the one bus that we're looking at purchasing right out of the general fund to make up for that difference. So currently we're negotiating CSEA, and we will be starting the administrators' contracts. One other thing we've looked at is based on enrollment, not replacing 3 of the 4 teaching positions in the district. They're still working on looking at the first runs for the master schedules. We're still looking at enrollment. But as of right now, the projection that I will give you for the expenditure figures does not have 3 positions in it currently. Revenue. So the governor proposed his executive budget. What he wants to do is something similar to what he discussed last year, which is cap aids that are expense-based and categorical. So our textbook, software, hardware aids, he wants to lump those in with our building aid, our transportation aid, and our MOCES aid. We do not want that. So here, we've already implemented it, but it will be detrimental to a lot of schools because they got their, for example, their Smart Schools money. So they're going to use all of their Smart Schools money, and then they might turn to BOCES to purchase Chromebooks or something like that. So they might have an inflated BOCES expense for a year that they will not be able to get aid on if that legislation goes through. So I'm fairly certain that it's not going to, but always something we have to look at. So the other item he proposed, the governor, our foundation aid increase alone, which is our base aid, we received a 1.3% increase on, which is fairly good, I think, for the first go around, because we know that he has his budget. The state comes out and says, no, we don't want that. So they propose something and they meet in the middle. So hopefully that will happen. There has been some talk about lost revenue due to the SALT, which is only allowing a certain amount for the deductions for your mortgage interest and your property taxes. So more to come on that, as you probably know just as much as I do about it. There's no current legislation. They're just working through that. So our property tax cap, we can go up to 1.85%. The current model that I'm discussing with you right now has a 1% increase on it. State aid, I just briefly talked about that. And continually, we are looking at decreasing our appropriate fund balance, and that's basically taking money from this budget year and allocating it for next year. So we don't want to have to rely on that year over year all the time. There is an amount of appropriated fund balance that is appropriate, but we had a lot, and in our reserve fund plan, we had talked about reducing that year over year. So we have done that in this budget. So I just want to talk a little bit about the factors that determine property tax rate. So as we look at the tax rates that I've, in the next couple of slides we'll talk about, the tax levy amount we set, school sets, that's a set amount. And then we have the assessments that are done by the municipalities, the local villages and towns. And then there's this other thing called the equalization rate. And what that does is make sure that a property here, the estimate is the same as a property in Long Island. So it brings up, so maybe we're under-assessed, maybe we're over-assessed. I've never seen that happen, but but that's what the equalization rate aims to do. So basically, it's really, in our county, it makes sure that everybody we're all on the same level playing field when it comes to that. So any change in those can affect the tax rate. So I gave you this because this is a lot of information to look at in one go. And this is what our estimated tax rates would be based on what we raise taxes. So the first column is 1.85, the second column is 1.7, the third column is 1.5, and the fourth column is 1%. So that's just looking at, here's what our rates would be, and here's what the tax levy would be, and what the increase from 18-19 would be if we decided to go out at these different percentages, right? So then I looked at what would that cost the taxpayers. So if you had $100,000, a house assessed at $100,000, if we went out at a 1.85% increase, that would roughly cost $41 on a $100,000 assessed value, and so on and so forth, as you can see. That's an average rate though. So here we have different equalization rates in our district. Elba's 94%, Pembroke was 98%, and I believe Alabama was 99%. So those all affect what that rate is, and that's why when you look back at this last slide, that's why these numbers are not all the same going down. So, what are we looking at? Currently, we have estimated revenues for the 19-20 year of $20,654,878, an expense of $20,833,509. So the shortfall, if you will, that we're looking at is $178,631. So again, John and I are still going through the budget. We're taking a closer look at it. We're waiting for the governor to come out with his run. And that revenue includes a 1% increase, not any of the other ones. So looking at our property tax increase, that only includes a 1%. So, and that's still information that we're talking about. So one last slide, I wanted to talk about the stamp project. Matt had brought this up last month. And I'm actually going to be meeting with GCEDC with John on Thursday to discuss our concerns with the stamp project. So for anybody that doesn't know what the stamp project is, the biggest economic development project in New York State is here in Alabama. So they've taken $2.4 million in assessed value, well, $2.4 million in assessed value off of our tax rolls. So we have an amount, a base amount, that our levy, which doesn't change, gets spread over. So when you reduce that, it increases what everybody else has to pay and assume on their tax rates. So I sent, John had sent you out the tax rate comparison. So I looked at what our rates were versus what they would be if STAMP had property that was still in the district. And then the difference, I costed out per $100,000 assessed value what it costs those taxpayers year over year. It's roughly $25 every year, somewhere in that area. But we're looking at not having a pilot currently. They don't have any, as far as I know, any tenants for the park. So over time, we need to ask, what are they doing on our behalf to put somebody in there? So, does anybody have questions for us to ask when we meet with the GCDC?
I think it's important that that you're meeting with them and that this district is reaching out on behalf of the taxpayers to make sure they understand that there's some tax revenue that hasn't come in that we'd expect would be coming in by now.
Yeah.
So it's good that you're doing that,
yeah,
regardless if it doesn't go anywhere.
Right. Well, I mean, initially the stamp project was supposed to be this great thing that brought people, tons and tons of people to our area, which is still would be great for Western New York. But I would like to know that they're doing more about it than just sharing tweets on Twitter and Facebook. So they're going to let us know. I believe that's what where the conversation is going. What are you doing to promote this so that we end up with a pilot payment in the very near future? Does anybody have any questions about any of those things that I presented on?
We've said it before, but on the SRO, we'll just make sure that people realize you're shooting on the high side for that $95,000.
Yes.
Yep. So what we approved was a 10-month at $82,000 and change. Yep. We expect there may be an increase from the county on that.
Correct.
But as long as it sticks, as long as we stick with 10 months and don't go to 12, which maybe there would be discussion about doing that, but as long as we stick with the 10 that we approved, we're
correct.
You're $10,000 to the cushion side.
Yes, and so normally in the past we have met, and you all have looked at the full budget model after the governor's final run has come out. So we can talk about that more in the future once John and I have really honed down and gotten the budget where we want it. So, but I think we're in a really good position. The tax cap is due to the state March 1st, so I'm going to file that with a 1% projected property tax increase, knowing that I can go back and modify that. So, yeah.
We're good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. John?
Just a couple quick reports for the board. Officer Wilson is in full swing. He's been here now since the beginning of February. From my observations and working with him, and I know the other administrators and working with him, he is doing a fantastic job. The first week that he was here, he had the opportunity to go to other school districts to shadow some of his colleagues, which he has. He has also brought a lot of officers over here to our district to walk them around, to be a part of what he is doing here. I know at one point last week he had a few officers meet and greet all the elementary kids, and it was quite the scene because there were 3 Genesee County police officers and cars out front. But it's just something that he's doing to kind of get our district out there with the other officers, and for him to, you know, kind of get a feel for what he needs to do. He's been attending all the events that you know I have asked him to attend, and he's doing a fantastic job. He's already working with families and students, and I know JC had a family and needed Officer Wilson there to help a student go over to the academy one afternoon. So he's been a great resource, and I hope that it continues. But so far, you know, all has been fantastic in having him. So thank you to the board for that resource. He's doing an outstanding job.
He's making security assessments. We probably don't need to broadcast to the world where he thinks we're weak on security, but he's
correct.
It's a big part of what he's doing.
Correct. So absolutely. Absolutely. And last week, Jordan and I met with Tom Graham and the town's disaster coordination team. It caught me up to speed on what their procedures and protocols are in case there's any sort of major disaster in the towns of Oakfield and Alabama. The school plays a huge role in that. As far as, you know, if motorists are stranded, whether school is in session or not. I know one of the concerns when we have weathers, you know, that we've had over the last few weeks is that when they close down the highway, it seems that our highway exits get to be used very frequently by the tractor trailers. And all of a sudden they come plowing down, you know, through 63 and 77, and it could create an issue for the town and leave some people stranded. So we are a home for some of those, and we just discussed again the policies and protocols, exchanged information and contact numbers with everybody. So and the town is certainly there to assist us in case there's ever you know, a weather emergency or the school has a major issue. So it was nice to meet everybody. We're all on the same page, and so it was just nice to go and meet everybody and see their protocols on those types of issues. So that's all I have.
Any questions for John? Okay, so we're going to move on to the policy readings. These are all first readings of policies. John, why don't you walk us through?
Yeah, if I could walk you through some of these. The district is required to revise and approve annually a handful of board policies. So the first 5 that are listed are ones that need, that first of all are required and that need to be revised and approved annually, which the board needs to do for this year. So the first 5 policies I've included are the ones that need to be reviewed. We are contracted with Erie One BOCES Policy Services, so I have asked for their updates on the policies. So we currently have these policies in place. It's just a matter of the board reviewing them more so for what pertains to our district, if we want to add or delete. And so those are just really the recommendations from the Erie One BOCES on how the policy should read. The board has the right to have 3 separate readings of these before they are board approved. So these do not need to be approved tonight, but over the next few months they should be approved. So really this is the first reading, no action needs to be taken. It's just a matter of some literature and some reviewing, and if there's any sort of comments or questions or things you want to add or things that you notice, please email myself and Tara and we'll stay on that. And so, you know, if you don't want to approve these tonight, we'll put them on the docket for next month as a second reading. Policy, the 6th policy regarding search and interrogations is a policy that the district already has. But I have added a paragraph regarding the use of metal detector wands and alcohol sensors. This is something that school districts are now trying to get ahead of the game with. As obviously technology and as the days and the months go on, kids seem to be one step ahead of us. So I've included a paragraph, and we did talk with our insurance company in regards to the use of metal detector wands and alcohol sensors. You may ask why. There are times, and please understand that this is not something that we would use daily on students as they're entering the building. But we have run into situations where we may be looking for something on a student as far as, a vape or a Juul, and students get very, very, very sneaky with how they hide those things. And what this policy does is it just gives our administration flexibility that if we do run into a situation of that we're able to use such a device. The same thing goes for school dances or school events. If we have a student that shows up here during the school day or at a school event and isn't right, and we have reasonable suspicion that they may be under the influence of alcohol, it allows us to be able to use an alcohol sensor, not only to check out maybe what they're drinking, but also to make sure that the student is safe and isn't under the influence. So as far as that 6th policy go under searches and interrogations, really that's all that it's adding is a little bit of flexibility for our administrative staff to use those devices. Once again, you could have 3 readings on that. I would ask that, again, if you want to review just that paragraph that has been added, and you can have some discussion or wait till the next board meeting for that. Again, it's not a new policy, it's just added blurb to allow us to do that. I don't know if that's something that wants to be discussed and approved, or we can make a second reading of it for next board meeting.
Do you want to go through these one by one, and we'll have that discussion on each of them if people want to punt the next meeting, or if we want to
Sure.
make a motion?
And then real quick, the final 2 policies are brand new policies. The policy on naming of school facilities, plaques, and memorials, and therapy dogs. I'm trying to be a little ahead of the game. There's going to be some situations coming down the line where we're going to want a policy as far as the naming of school facilities, plaques, and memorials. I do know that many districts face this when you have either teacher retirements or unfortunately student or teacher accidents, or there's a community push to have a part of a school district, whether that be a classroom, an athletic field, a gymnasium, an auditorium named after a certain individual. Sometimes it's hard for the board to navigate where to go with that. So this policy just kind of streamlines the process. There is a grandfathered clause in there that this does not refer to any of the existing plaques or memorials that we have, but just for the future, in case the board is ever approached with the notion that there's a movement or a push to have a memorial or plaque or dedication to somebody. It gives you really more power to kind of streamline what is being asked, and really it provides the board the decision on what should happen. That I would suggest that might be one that you would hold off on improving because it is a new policy, and kind of sit back and chew on that. And also the one on therapy dogs. There is a big push to have therapy dogs within the school setting in many districts. We actually have 2 members of our OA family here that have trained therapy dogs. And again, I think to streamline the process, the board should have a policy regarding the use of therapy dogs. And so that's been included for your reading. And again, I maybe would hold off on approving that so you could, chew on that one as well.
Have we used therapy dogs in the past?
They have been present here in the district.
Okay.
We have discontinued that practice because I think there is a concern with the liability the district has, not only the certain individuals that bring the dogs in, but just to the community and to the students and the teachers, and I don't want to put the district at risk. So in researching what we should do, our insurance said you should have a board policy on therapy dogs and really streamline that process. It shouldn't be a willy-nilly decision to bring an animal in here for that type of use without some sort of board policy.
So if these dogs meet this potential policy that we might vote on, then we would allow the dogs to come in?
That would be something that I'd discuss with the board. It would be something that we would have to notify the community. If you read the board policy, it's pretty tight on what the certain individual would need to do.
It would still require your approval though, right, John? I mean, this
Yes.
isn't the approval of a therapy dog coming in, this is the guideline, but it would still require your approval and your management of that
Correct. The
situation.
policy states that obviously these dogs need to be certified. There's certain requirements that the dog would need to have to maintain. There's actions on the dog that can't break the board policy, otherwise they wouldn't be allowed in here. And so we have had therapy dogs here before, but there needs to be really a system in place for allowing them. One of the board items in there is about the staff and the students being comfortable with the dogs in the building. And if we have a sense that they're not, well, then you're breaking board policy and the dog won't be allowed here. So it really limits the actions of what the therapy dog can do. I'm not saying that I don't believe in therapy dogs, but it's an up-and-coming thing, and I think the board is going to want to have some sort of policy on that, because I think it's going to get more common with using therapy dogs with staff and students here in districts.
I think historically those dogs weren't fully trained as therapy dogs, right? They were sort of like in their infancy in the beginning when they were here.
Our speech pathologist, her dog is fully. Yes,
No.
there have been others.
Right,
that have
and I
not
think
been
that
fully.
Right, I think that was
Yes.
the initial issue a couple of years ago, was that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were,
And we didn't have a
Right.
policy to guide us.
Right, there
Right.
was
at
no,
the time.
right, basically. It
Yeah,
was,
so I think if you want to take a look at that policy, you can certainly add things, but it really does outline what the dog needs to have to be required to be within the district.
Okay, so why don't we go through them, and if people have feelings one way or the other, if we should approve them as is. I know there was some email discussion, some verbiage concerns. Was that just related to the new policies, which you recommend we not approve today anyway?
That is correct.
There were no comments on 7.1 through 7.6 regarding verbiage. So 7.1, so we don't have any motions or anything yet. As a group, do we want to push this out a month, or do we want to approve this?
Just 7.1.
Yeah.
I don't have any issues in that one. I could approve it. It's up to you guys.
I don't have any issues either. Mandated reported training, is that yearly through the school? How often does that have to happen?
Yeah, somebody needs to be, well,
I know, like as a teacher, you get it when you're leaving college, and I know when I was at Leroy years ago, I almost think it was yearly, it was just brief.
yeah.
Getting at school superintendent's days.
There's not any formal training. It's really just the position that you hold. For example, all the teachers within the district, including all the administrators, were all mandated reporters.
Right.
I haven't been trained in 25 years.
Okay.
Yeah,
I know, like, when I taught at Leroy, they did like a brief refresher, like, these are
Yeah.
things you have to look for, you
Yeah.
have to do this type of thing.
Right.
Didn't know if that's something that we do here, or,
I will certainly look into that.
Okay.
I'm not aware of that, though.
Maybe, why don't we do it like 7.1 through 7.6, these policies that you're saying we're just updating, we could, if there aren't objections, we could approve them all together. So are there any of 7.1 through 7.6 that anybody would object to us approving today? Chris?
No, I'm good with that.
Tim, is there anything there that you want to push out a month to have more time to review?
I think the biggest one, I think, would be the interrogation and that one.
You want to push that out a month and we'll do?
Yeah, I think so, because I think that needs to be looked at a little harder.
Okay.
So 1 through 5.
Yep, so I think we can do it through consent agenda. Is that accurate, Tara? Recommended action would be to approve policies listed of 7.1 through 7.5 as written. Does that sound good? Do we have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. So 7.6 we're going to push out. 7.7, 7.8. On the naming, I spoke with John about this. On the naming of school facilities, the only thing that I was uncomfortable with there, and I understand the protection that we're trying to offer ourselves, but the recommendation that libraries, gymnasiums, athletic fields, classrooms shall be named according to their educational purpose and not named for individuals. So of course we've got Mr. Callan with the tennis courts, and then Mr. Gilbert with the ball field that we just approved last year. I think with these policies, we probably want to be careful not to approve policies that oftentimes would require exceptions, which I think we always reserve the right to do. I wonder if we could put a couple sentences in there, strike that, and put a couple sentences in there along the lines of if we are to name those types of venues after people, that those individuals be important to those venues, have served some sort of major role to those venues. Obviously, Mr. Callan was important to the tennis team, and Mr. Gilbert was important to the baseball team. I don't think any of us would have regrets, of doing what we did, so I don't know that we'd want to adopt a policy that would prohibit us from being able to do that without an exception. And there was that, and then there was also the permanent memorials and recognitions. So again, Jeremy Yossi's approached us last year about rehabilitating Mr. Callan's, and then we just happily accepted the scoreboard for the ball field, which I think maybe would be considered permanent. So kind of the same thing there.
My concern with the memorials and that is that we are putting all responsibility on whoever decides to put it there to do any of the maintain costing, but in the same sense, at no point in here do we request that it looks up to date. So they could put a memorial bench out there, it could start to deteriorate, and we have to leave it there or throw it away because they're not responsible for coming to make it look nice, is my only issue. I'm not saying if we're not going to incur any of the cost from it, then we need to set some sort of standard that it can't look like.
Upkeep type of,
sure.
Yeah.
I feel like there should be something in there about the maintenance.
Anything else there or on the therapy dogs? Okay, so I guess we'll push those three out. So we're on to new business. Be resolved the attached list of CSE, CPSC placements amendments be approved. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second?
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes. Instructional calendar. So we're approving both calendars, and after we find out what our state government's doing regarding the holiday, we'll know which one to go with. Be it resolved that the 2019-2020 instructional calendars be approved. A motion?
So moved.
Jen?
Second.
Jeff? Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes. Communications. Do we all have these things, most of these things, Tara?
Yes.
Okay. I don't think there's anything other than what we see at our places here. Discussion roundtable. Nothing was submitted. Does anybody have anything that has popped up that they would like to add? Okay, subcommittee reports. No on the scholarship fund, no on the sewer. Instructional technology, Lorna is out. Health and wellness.
Nicole?
The last health and wellness meeting we had, we decided to support the students with snacks on their testing days. So I think that was the biggest thing that came out of that. So the first day, I believe, we're doing breakfast for all the kids. And then up here at the middle high, we're doing snacks through Mary for kids on testing days. So that's, what's that?
Bike to school.
Oh, yes, and the bike to school day is also gonna happen again. So, do we have a firm date on that?
May-ish, middle May.
Sorry, put me on the spot. Yeah, maybe, I will get that date out to you all if you want to be part of that ride to school day. It was very successful last year. I mean, I think
Was it torrential rain last year successful?
That was
the walk to
school.
That was
That
school.
was the walk to school day.
Okay.
The bike ride was a really nice day.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a beautiful day. So we're doing that again.
Sounds about right,
and
50-50 chance.
Yeah.
just trying to keep the momentum up from the health and wellness. And like the Student Lighthouse team had said, we've been doing the tastings every month, and we rely on those kids to pass all of those out for the most part. Most of our tastings are done with the Student Lighthouse team down there. So it's really nice, actually.
Good. Safety, I don't think, and code of conduct, I don't think we have anything there. Personnel, be resolved the following appointments, reinstatements be approved. A motion?
So moved.
Jen?
Second.
Jeff? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Be resolved that the Board of Education enter executive session at 6:55 for the purpose of discussing the appointment of a particular employee. A motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. All set. We're in executive session.